Arminta Harriet Ross was born around 1820 in Dorchester County, Maryland. Her parents, Harriet Green and Ben Ross, were enslaved by Mary Patterson Borders and Anthony Thompson, who treated their slaves as less than human. Early on in Harriet's life, she endured countless acts of violence upon her and her family by the Thompsons. She witnessed her mother stand up against the separation of her family as a child, which left a lasting mark on her. One day, while shopping for her family at a local store, Tubman encountered a man escaping enslavement. Pursuing the man were his owners, and when they caught up with him, they demanded that Tubman help to restrain him. When she resisted, she was hit in the head with a 2-pound weight by one of the men. The incident caused a head injury, resulting in Harriet having seizures, severe headaches, and narcolepsy. She also experienced dreamlike states, which she viewed as signs delivered to her from God. These dreamlike states helped Tubman delve deeper into her religion. In 1844, Tubman married a free black man named John Tubman and changed her name to Harriet Tubman. It is said that the name change was to honor her mother. In 1849, Harriet, along with her brothers Ben and Harry, escaped from slavery, fearing that her family would be sold away. They were missing for 2 weeks before a runaway notice was posted about their escape. Tubman's brothers suddenly had second thoughts and returned to their plantation, forcing Tubman to return with them. Tubman was determined to be free, so she escaped again. This time, she was alone. She fled to Philadelphia using the Underground Railroad and help from the Quakers as she made the 90-mile trip. After finding freedom herself, Tubman was compelled to return to her family and later helped grant them freedom. After freeing her immediate family, she returned to Maryland to help free other family members and enslaved blacks. As she continued to make trips to free more people, she gained more confidence in her abilities to help free her people. Her legend was growing more and more with each successful trip she made, and she even gained the name Moses for her awesome efforts. As Tubman was leading people to freedom, her husband refused to leave with her. He decided to stay in Maryland because he remarried. The Fugitive Slave Law was passed in 1850, which allowed slavers to capture people escaping slavery in the North and return them to slavery, making the northern states of America no longer safe for those escaping slavery. Tubman and 10 other men consulted with Frederick Douglass on several occasions, trading ideas to further help free blacks from slavery. In 1858, Tubman met John Brown, an abolitionist who viewed violence as a way to end slavery. Brown viewed Tubman as a general in the fight against slavery. Tubman was also active in the Civil War as a nurse and a cook. She helped to lead the Combahee River Raid, which freed over 700 enslaved people in South Carolina. Tubman eventually bought land in Auburn, New York for her family to settle until her death. She passed in 1913 but left a legacy that will live forever. Miss Tubman risked her life and her freedom to save her people from the inhumane institution of slavery. She embodies humanity, leadership, and courage. Miss Harriet Tubman, we proudly stand on your shoulders. Welcome back to Breakdown Friday. Joseph Ward, Professor Carl Tone Jones, Patrick, aka Super Pat. We are here and we're breaking down Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman is one of my favorite figures from just world history, period. I view what she accomplished as one of the greatest feats that a human could ever accomplish, especially facing what she was facing, which was white supremacy, but the actual system of slavery in America. And a woman looked death in the eye, looked fear in the eye, looked racism in the eye, looked slavery in the eye, and still freed herself and freed other Black people as well. And so I want to break down what, like, kind of thinking about what motivated her to do what she did, what made her continue, what was some of the fuel that led her to even have a thought about escaping, but not just escaping, coming back and saving others. And then all of the other accomplishments that she had after, or you could say other acts of servitude that she had after escaping and freeing others. So I think she's worthy of a deep dive, and uh, all of her accomplishments and everything that she gave for her people. She risked her life for her people. So I think she's worthy of a deep dive. She's worthy of the respect of us to really break down what she did, and you know, how can we best honor the spirit and the works of Harriet Tubman. But PC, I want to start with you though. Um, I got, just played the video and it's going over her life. From your perspective on what you've learned about Harriet Tubman, even from the video or previously before the video, what you saw, um, from your perspective, why do you think Harriet Tubman chose to risk her life to free her people? Like, why do you think she chose to take up that mission?
For some of us, it's just in us,
Yeah.
and by no means am I comparing myself to her deeds and her works, but I'm just saying for some of us, the chains you can't hold us, to change the shackles you can't hold us, and she embodied that spirit, the spirit of liberation that many people talk about, but not too many of us walk about. And I mean, it's just an honor to uh, have this conversation because Harriet Tubman is indeed like my top five. I would honestly say she might be in my top three of liberators in regards to black people, especially in the Americas, but internationally speaking. Harriet Tubman carried a certain spirit about her that wouldn't allow her to compromise. Uh, we speak about what made her go back or what made her leave in the first place. The first time she tried to leave, she got caught. It was
Snitches.
her. Yeah, she tried to take her brothers with her, and them, her brothers didn't have the courage she had, so they actually went back to the plantation. So she went back with her brothers to the plantation and received a stiff punishment. But that second time she got out of there, she did it all by herself.
Hmm.
With and she didn't know of an underground railroad at that time. She did this by herself. So she just had a tremendous amount of courage, and she was not. She was a bitty little thing, 90 pounds, 4 feet 11. But she was, fearless. Well, I won't say fearless, but she was extremely brave in regards to into her into her mission. She got to Philadelphia and she was introduced to a man by the name, I believe his name was William Still.
Hmm.
And William Still was the one who coordinated with her and introduced her to the Underground Railroad.
Yep.
And when she came back, you know, um, to the eastern shores of Maryland to go get her husband, that's the reason why she went back. The first reason why she went back. Her husband was a freed man. He was a freed Negro at that time. He wouldn't remarry because he wouldn't come with her the first time when she left. She went back for him. He wouldn't, so she ended up going back to the plantation and bringing people, other people. They saw her and she said, I can show y'all what freedom looks like. And that's how she started her journey, and it's like I could say so much about Harriet Tubman because uh, I actually have not only a lesson that I was teaching about this, but I do a Black History Week program, and one of the programs is featuring Harriet Tubman. So we can go on and on and on
That's what we're here
about
for.
this. But one thing I'm glad about because she met I believe it was John Brown. She met John Brown because he was part of the abolitionist movement up here. And if anybody ever does a deep dive into John Brown, he was a very interesting character. But I'm glad that she wasn't in Philadelphia when he came to recruit people for the raid on Harper's Ferry because he wanted to bring Harriet with him,
Yeah.
but she
Oh,
was
right.
on one of her journeys. He asked Frederick Douglass, and Frederick was like, I got some shit to do. You know what I'm saying? I'm writing his letter about July 4th.
Yeah.
speech. I just can't make it. And the reason why I'm saying I'm glad she wasn't there because John Brown got caught.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody that raided Harper's Ferry survived. It was brave. It was, I
It was
guess,
needed.
yeah. But I'm glad because then we would never know about her true testament. We would only hear pieces and parts of it. But to just talk about General Tubman, as she was later identified, she not only freed over 300 people, she also led brigades into the South. You know what I'm saying? She led raids on plant, like you talked about some of the raids in some of those areas and some of those battles and some of those plantations. She actually led the troops in there. So she went down there and she became a part of the part of the Union Army as a nurse. But by the end of the war, the troops were referring to her as General Tubman, which was an honor that was bestowed upon her, posthumously, what I'm saying, after she died, I believe. But it was just so many different things that you could talk about with Harriet Tubman. She was the reason for the legislation, the fugitive slave law. She was one of the reasons why they actually put the fugitive slave law into effect, for which they could travel north of the Mason-Dixon line and retrieve freed Africans who escaped, past that line of demarcation into Pennsylvania. That's why Philadelphia was such a major point on the Underground Railroad, because in getting to Philadelphia meant you got the freedom. That means you cross that line from Delaware, Maryland into Pennsylvania. And then therefore they had to extend the Underground Railroad because she spent some time in Canada too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just so much I can say about, that sister that man, I'm like I'm a little flustered right now because I want to just keep pouring, but I want Patrick to jump into this too.
Nah, it's all good. We got time. We got time. But Pat, jump in and give us your thoughts. Like in a time during slavery, like PC said, uh, the Fugitive Slave Act was created in the midst of her freeing others. So what, and you're from what you've learned and everything that you've read about Harriet Tubman. What are some of your thoughts about her and her acts of service and how she contributed to Black people gaining their freedom?
Um, I don't think she would consider it a choice. Um,
Okay.
I think I put her in the same vein as because she was. I'm trying not to bring anybody else into it. She felt like she had a divine mandate, heaven's mandate, like a true calling and purpose given to her by God. And like one of the best things that could have happened to us was just hitting her over the head.
Unfortunately, yes.
Right. Because had that not happened, we might not have Harriet Tubman.
Right.
Um, and to that I want to say we should pay more attention and be more careful with how we deal with people with mental health issues because
Right.
they can be very, very helpful.
Right.
Um, that being said, I don't think she would view it as having a choice. I think anytime you meet people that feel like they are led or are driven by God, we've seen movies. Birth of a Nation was a movie about another man that felt like he was about a man that felt like he was led by God to do what he did. And when you read the accounts, you realize he was also not a physically imposing figure and not strong enough to really do what he was trying to do. But because he felt like he had a calling from God, he was determined to make it happen. Harriet Tubman is in that same vein of somebody that honestly felt like they had a calling from God. And I think that's the difference between a lot of those people back then and what we're dealing with now. The pressures of the situation created a world for them where uh, the need to be free and fight oppression wasn't something they just wanted to do because it was something that would make their lives a little bit better. Like they felt like God put them here to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's you don't meet a lot of people. I've met people like that. I'm not gonna say I haven't met anybody like that, but I'll go back. You don't meet a lot of people like that. And when you do, you can usually tell because you can feel it. You can like sense it on them. The reason I correct myself is because I feel like you two brothers feel like you have a purpose towards that goal, and I watch y'all take steps towards that goal again, not to try to put anybody in the class of anybody else, but in terms of people that move with purpose, it's really rare that you meet those types of people. And every
Right.
time you do, you just kind of got to sit back and marvel at what they're able to accomplish just off strength of will alone. Like, no, this is what I'm gonna do because I ain't got no choice but to do it. So, I'm not gonna get into the history and all that because PC, he got that covered and we led with your video. But I just think like if we're looking at the things that made her special, I think that really sums it up. Anytime you deal with an individual, a society, a nation that feels like there's a heaven's mandate, you, like some amazing shit is fixing to happen. It's gonna be great for somebody and real bad for somebody else.
Yeah. Now, but like you're talking about being compelled by God or even having faith, faith in a God. We've talked about this before in the past, but I'm gonna bring it up again. It's interesting that a community of people who don't follow the Christian faith, some of our biggest influences are people who follow the Christian faith, who were devout believers within the Christian faith. And so I think that aspect is interesting. I'm not sure how closely many people have looked at that, but in the case of Harriet Tubman, like you talked about being hit in the head with a 2-pound weight, I'm just thinking about all of the bull that she had to go through, all of the atrocities that she had to go through living as an enslaved person in America. Like, I would like said in the video, a man was escaping. Grown white men rode up on her and expected her to help them capture somebody who was escaping. And when she refused to do it, they busted in the head with a weight. Like so I'm just thinking like for nowadays, how many people would go through that and quit? Like that's it. They done. They giving up. They're not going any further. They're not doing none of this. Self-preservation is the highest priority. We're not doing this now. But in the
Yeah,
go ahead.
that's a. Well, I mean, I think we see it. I mean, we've seen it, and we see it now. People want to resort to being scholars because it's safe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Harriet did that. Araminta Ross, she did that. Probably not even knowing how to read. I mean, if I'm understanding, she didn't learn how to read until she came up north. So, um, this the whole concept of how she was able to move and maneuver just based off of that and not, I won't say instinct, but she even acknowledged that she was led by those visions. You
Right.
know, she would say God would tell her. And when we think about it, and I know we can think about the religious aspect of it, but I'm thinking more about the spiritual aspect and our spiritual connection with God, because all of these Abrahamic religions, they are based deep in our African spiritual systems. So when you think about how people talk about the Orisha and the Loa, and those are the laws, the forces that are governed by God. And when you hear about how those things can communicate with you and lead with you, I mean, you can go back to the Haitian Revolution and see how those things were the same notions, the same mindset was put in place. Bookman's prayer, Cecilia Fatima being
There
able
was
to
some
go
faith had a lot to do with it.
right, going to these different plantations and plant seeds and teach the teach the root work. You know, um, what's missing today is people are absent of that. Most people nowadays move into a either agnostic or agnostic or they move in a way where they try to get away from having any connection to God. I mean, how many times have we heard somebody say, well, the universe is speaking to us? Well, who is the
Well,
universe?